Hello, welcome to this review for Paladin for Paladin Un'Goro. We've done Mage, Druid, and Hunter so far, and now we're on to Paladin. I don't think Paladin's going to be very strong in Paladin Un'Goro. Spoilers, I'm not going to like most of these cards. Um, the Paladin quest is a very interesting one. It's the last Kaleidosaur. Cast 6 spells. The quest is to cast 6 spells on your minions, which basically means buffs, right? And the reward is Galvadon. So Galvadon is a 5 mana 8/8 that adapts 5 times. So, first of all, how good is Galvadon? A 5 mana 8/8 that adapts 5 times, right? Okay, so here's your dream scenario, right? You go Galvadon, you get Wind Fury, Stealth, and +3 attack, at least. The other two doesn't really matter. But you want that specific combination. So that means you can then do 16 damage in the next turn. So it's kind of like a finisher, big burst, right? Maybe you get another +3 attack, or maybe a +1/+1, and you know that you're doubling that. So like another +3 attack is you then have a it's a 5 mana 8/8, so +3 attack takes it to 11, so that's 22 on Wind Fury. Another +3 attack is 28 on Wind Fury. So if you can, I mean, this is a deck where you're playing buffs, right? So if you stealth it and you Wind Fury it, you can always just buff it with the buff cards that are in your deck in order to complete this quest. And yeah, basically it is a finisher, right? But the big problem is I don't think that these quests are good at, I don't think that the quest is a particularly achievable quest. I think this is one of the most difficult and least interesting quests to complete. Let's just take a look at Galvadon. Okay. Okay, so Galvadon, here we go. 5 mana. Oh, he's a 5 mana 5/5, sorry. Okay, yeah, so that's what I thought. 5 mana 5/5 adapt 5 times. So if you get 2, yeah, it's only 16 damage with +3 Wind Fury and Stealth. And it doesn't go through Taunt, it's a Stealth on the turn that you play it, and it shows them what the combo you're about to do, and then they can just Taunt, and then you have to remove the Taunt. And I don't know if Galvadon is good enough for finisher like that. So, the last Kaleidosaur, yeah, not a quest I'm too excited about. I have built a Paladin deck here that I think could be quite interesting. It is a very aggressive Paladin, but I feel like that's kind of what you need in order to actually guarantee that you'll have minions on board in order to buff, because we don't have... the days are long gone of shielded minibots and masterful battles and things that would guarantee you always had stuff on board, right? Okay, so we're going to reserve judgment of this quest until after we've discussed all these other cards and the deck. But you know, it's good to get the quest out of the way to have context. Okay, so the other Paladin legendary for this set is Sunkeeper Tarim. So 6 mana 3/7, Taunt, and Battlecry set all other minions attack and health to 3. So a board wide Keeper of Alderman. I'd have to say first of all that a board-wide Keeper of Alderman is worse than a normal Keeper of Alderman. Because how often is your opponent actually going to have a board that is multiple minions that are really big? I mean, the only real case is against Jade decks, right? So what this means is your little Paladin minions your Silverhand Recruits, if you have a board of Silverhand Recruits, they have a board of Jade, they go face and don't kill you somehow, and your Silverhands can now attack. You can then Sunkeeper Tarim, and your Silverhand Recruits will now trade into all their Jade. Cool. Or Sunkeeper Tarim himself will tank a bunch of these 3/3s because he is Taunt, so they have to attack him, and he is 3/7. But I mean, if you're Paladin and you need to kill big Jade things, yeah, you've just got Equality Consecration, Equality Pyromancer. I don't really see Sunkeeper Tarim being good for that. You've got a Yadrik, the Pure. I mean, that never really saw play, and that sets them to 1 attack, which is just better, and it's only on your opponent's minions. So I don't think Sankey-Patarium is therefore a good control tool like that. I think it's best if you, in like maybe a mid-range deck where it's kind of used to buff your silver hand recruits to allow them to trade, but it has to be in a situation where your opponent has traded off most of your board, you have a bunch of silver hand recruits, then they play a few things, or maybe just one big thing, then you play Sankey-Patarium, trade your silver hand recruits into that thing. But I don't know. Keeper of Voldemort, still kind of better in most scenarios. Yeah, so I really don't like Sankey-Patarium much. I'm gonna give him a 1 for playability, and yeah, so I'm gonna give ratings out of 5 if you haven't seen the other videos yet. I give each of the cards ratings out of 5 for viability and or playability, either way, interchangeable words in this case, and for flavor. So Sankey-Patarium 1 for playability. I think it's bad. I mean, 1 is like it's probably never gonna see play, right? It's not like there's some things that are like zeros and some neutrals, right? But like they just print like really basic cards like Ultrasaur. I mean, that's never gonna see play. But I'm not gonna rate that lower than 1. I'm not gonna rate things lower than 1. Anyway, so Sankey-Patarium 1 for playability. For flavor, I don't know. I think it's kind of boring. So 1 for flavor. I just don't like it. I just don't really like the card. I think it's when we saw it at first, I was like, oh, okay, they want to go mid-range with Paladin, and then they didn't print anything mid-range really for Paladin. Paladin's really all over the show, and yeah, I don't like it. Okay, next we have Dynasize, an 8 mana spell. So this has got to do a lot. It sets a minion's attack and health to 10. So 8 mana, turn an Argent Squire into a 10/10 Divine Shield. That's pretty good, but you have to have an Argent Squire in your hand and be on 9 mana, and that needs to actually be good. A 9 mana 10/10 Divine Shield is not something I would play, never mind when it requires 2 cards in order for me to make that happen. I mean, maybe you play an Argent Squire on 7 that doesn't get dealt with, but I don't know. I think Dynasize is way too situational in its actual uses. I don't think it's a good card. I'm not going to spend too much more time talking about it. It's a pseudo Pyroblast and aggressive Paladin decks, but I don't even think it's good enough in that. So I'm going to give it a 1 for playability and a 3 for flavor. I like its flavor. It's funny. It has a funny picture turning a Murloc into like a giant-sized, well, a dinosaur-sized Murloc, right? I mean, the idea is you turn these small things into things that can compete with dinosaurs. So I like it for its flavor, but I don't think it's very good. And then we have Primalfin Champion, 2 mana, 1/2 Murloc. Death Rattle, return any spells you cast on this minion to your hand. So we saw this be insane in the release stream. Obviously, this is one of the main cards that's going to synergize with the last Kaleidosaur. One of the big problems with buffs in general is when you buff a minion, you are creating extra value when your opponent removes that minion. Because if you put a buff on a minion, you have now put 2 cards into 1 card, and then when they spend 1 card of removal on that minion, they are getting 2 cards worth of value for you. So it's really bad for card advantage. So Primalfin Champion helps to deal with that issue, but obviously it doesn't dodge silence, right? So silence effects very, very, very good. Silence, polymorph, hex, all those kind of effects very, very good against Primalfin Champion. Yeah, but if you buff it, even just 1 or 2 small buffs, then you get those back. It makes it a lot easier to finish the quest. So I think in any quest decks, Primalfin Champion's probably going to see play. Even if we just combine it with a Divine Strength on 3, right? 2 mana, or 3 mana, 2/4, that's not horrible. It gives you a 1-cost spell back when it dies. Maybe it survives another turn, you put another buff on it, it gives you another spell. Yeah, okay, Primalfin Champion, it might be playable if the quest deck is good enough and worth it. The biggest problem with the quest deck is the buff spells, which we will get to just now. Then we have Vine Cleaver. Oh, sorry, so Proudfin Champion. 3 for playability, entirely depends on the quest. 4 for flavor. I like the idea of the Death Rattle giving back your buff spells to make buff spells a bit better. Next we have Vine Cleaver, the new weapon for Paladin. It's a 7 mana 4/3, and it says after your hero attacks, summon 2 1/1 Silverhand recruits. So, summoning recruits, essentially you get 6 recruits out of this, but spread over 3 turns, which is a very notable point. And you get a 4/3 weapon. So True Silver Champion is a 4/2 weapon that is worth 4 mana, but more importantly it actually comes down on turn 4 to deal with minions that are more appropriately statted for it to deal with, right? Whereas Vine Cleaver is coming down a bit late in the game, so your opponent still needs to be playing weaker minions for Vine Cleaver to really work, because you don't really want to attack into his 6/6s with Vine Cleaver. Then you have to swing with Vine Cleaver and trade some minions. So, I mean, then what? Vine Cleaver's going face. 7 mana, 12 damage, better over 3 turns. Maybe in some aggressive deck, Vine Cleaver. It's a really slow finisher. Like, even Arcanite Reaper is sometimes too slow for Pyro Warrior. Like, when you upgrade it, often you don't get those last charges out of it. And I don't really see Vine Cleaver being playable in an aggressive deck. I think the fact that you get the Silverhand recruits spread over 3 turns is really bad, right? Because you can only attack once per turn with the weapon. So you get 2 Silverhand recruits. You either have to do something with them that turn, or they just kill them, and then you get 2 Silverhand recruits again. And then you're never actually getting to the point where like you can do something like with the Lightfuse Stegodon or Sunkeeper Tarium or something like that on multiple Silverhand recruits. It's pretty much always just 2. And maybe 1 from your hero power. Okay, so Vine Cleaver, 1 for playability. I think it's kind of bad. It looks on a paper like a lot of good value, but I think the timing is really bad. Getting a 4/3 weapon on turn 7 is not good enough, I don't think. And for flavor, I like the weapon generating the Silverhand recruit effect. I think that's pretty good. I think it could be it's like a more interesting way of doing the Muster for Battle kind of issue, right? Muster for Battle was a bit too strong because it put all the recruits into play on the turn it was played, whereas Vine Cleaver is a slower way of doing that. I would have liked to see it on a smaller weapon, but on Vine Cleaver I think it's bad. So I'm going to give it a 4 for flavor, because I really like the flavor, but I'm not playing this card, it's bad. Okay, next we have Spike Ridge Steed. So this is kind of the way they're trying to go, okay, you don't have to build an aggressive deck with the Paladin. He has a valuable buff to play in the late game. So, Spike Ridge Steed is a 6 mana spell. Give a minion +2/6 and taunt. When it dies, summon a Stegodon. So a Stegodon is a 6 mana 2/6 taunt. So on paper, you're getting 4/12 worth of stats, both of that which has taunt, plus for 6 mana, and the first 2/6 of that has charge because you're putting it on a minion that's already been on the board, assuming that was a minion that survived and not a minion you played with your Spike Ridge Steed. So I think this is a very valuable buff, very good for a mid-range to late game deck that wants to use the last Kaleidosaur as its thing, but I don't think that deck exists, to be quite honest. I don't think Spike Ridge Steed is good enough. Maybe I think it's too slow against aggressive decks, and the stats are too bad at distribution in mid-range battles, right? It's valuable, but only buffing 2 attack is questionable. The dream is to get it on a 5-drop, right? So that the 2 attack allows it to trade 2 or 3 times before it dies, and then it at least gives you something that gives you a way to have initiative on the board. Because taunt sometimes in mid-range matchups just allows you to make it so that they don't get to choose where things attack. They have to go through your taunt first, and that sometimes just makes it awkward for you and allows you to have better control in minion on minion battle. But yeah, I don't think Stegodon is good. I don't think it has a place at the moment, so I'm going to give it a 2 for playability. I think it's a good card, but just doesn't have a place. And I'm going to give it a 4 for flavor. I mean, the idea is you're riding a dinosaur that you then, when you die, it still fights, and that's kind of cool. I like the Tortolan that they've introduced. I mean, just like I just like how they look, and that being on the Spike Ridge Steed, I think it's quite amusing. So sure, I'll give it a 4 for flavor. Okay, then we have Life Fuse Stegodon. So this is one of the payoff cards for Silverhand Recruits. It is a 4 mana 3/4 beast, battle cry, adapt to Silverhand Recruits. So this is one adaptation across all of them, which is an iffy effect at the most. I mean, at the very least, at least. Yeah, so having to give all your Silverhand Recruits the same buff is questionable. Maybe you have 3-4 Silverhand Recruits and then you play this and you give them all +3 attack and then they do a lot of damage. But, fringe. I mean, what scenario are you really managing to keep a bunch of Silverhand Recruits on the board is the question. You give them +1/+1, yeah. At 2/2 recruits, it's a lot worse than Quartermaster, for example, which is the thing this is always going to get compared to, right? And the problem with Life You Stick It On is the adaptations aren't reliable because there's 10 adaptations and you only get to pick from 3 that you get randomly chosen for you. Poisonous is sometimes pretty good, allows you to trade your Silverhand Recruits into big minions if they've been ignoring them, but if you're playing a deck that has Life You Stegodon, once the meta's settled and they know to expect Life You Stegodons, they're going to play around it, kill your recruits. It's a card for a mid-range Paladin, which I don't think exists. I don't think mid-range Paladin is going to be good. One of the reasons I don't think Spike Ridge Steed is good. So yeah, so Life You Stegodon, pretty underwhelming, I think. At first I was quite excited about it, but now that we've seen everything, I don't really like it very much. So I'm going to give it a 2 for playability and a 2 for flavor. I just don't get the idea that a dinosaur is adapting recruits. It doesn't make sense to me. I get, like, there's a beast that adapts Murlocs. That makes a bit more sense. I get spells that adapt your minions, but why is a dinosaur adapting recruits? How does it adapt recruits? Does it... What? It doesn't make any sense to me. How are recruits, which are just humans, like poisonous and... What? No, and they have flaming claws, and adapt doesn't make sense on humans. Yeah, so 1 for flavor. I don't like that. I don't like that. Okay, next we have Hydrologist, a 2 mana 2/2 minion. Battle cry, discover a secret. So first of all, very ordinary stat line. Oh, it's also a Murloc. It's very cute, so immediately I'm going to give it a 4 for flavor for being cute, but I think that when it comes to viability, discovering a Paladin Secret is not that great. Ever since Avenge went away, Paladin Secrets have really just been worse on average. There's no new secrets that are particularly good. There's obviously infinite value if you chain Hydrologists into getaway Kodos, and you can infinitely play Hydrologists, but I don't know where that's getting you. So, because you have to only have Hydrologist on the board every turn, you only have Hydrologist and then you play Getaway Kodo. Well, that's not getting you anywhere. I don't really like Hydrologist. I don't think it's playable. I think it is a 1 for playability. Then we have Lost in the Jungle, a 1 mana spell, summon 2 1/1 Silverhand Recruits. I really like this card as a token card. It's very useful in the buff deck because you can... it's a cheap way to get multiple bodies on board, making it more reliable for you to have 2 bodies on board. I think maybe this is a card we see in sort of a Paladin Zoo deck, but yeah, I think it's a good card. I struggled to fit it into the Paladin deck that I bought simply because of the amount of space I needed for buff spells, and I think that's one of the big problems with the Last Kaleidosaur quest overall. So I'm gonna give this a 3 for playability. I think it's better, and I just couldn't find space for it, but I think it's a decent spell. My biggest worry is I don't think Paladin is going to be very playable overall. So obviously, I'm giving all these cards ratings based on the fact that the class might be playable, right? If Paladin is not playable, well, you can -2 playability from everything. And then Lost in the Jungle is unplayable, and pretty much all of this stuff is unplayable. Paladin got some overall pretty weak cards, I think. And lastly, we have the only other buff, well, okay, there's 3 buff spells in this set, but we have probably the only playable one, and that's Adaptation. It is a 1 mana spell, and it reads Adapter Friendly Minion. So this is this suffers from the problem where, like, it could be so many different things, right? It could be Hand of Protection, where it gives it Divine Shield. It could be Blessing of Might, where it gives it attack. I think a lot of the times on cheap minions, giving the summon plants is going to be one of the best outcomes, because it then gives you more minions on board for you to buff with your other spells, and it's like imagine putting this on a Primal Fin champion, and with the plants, then your Primal Fin champion dies, Adaptation comes back to hand, then you can adapt a plant for more plants, and then you've gotten two spells out of 6 on your last Kaleidosaur quest, which is, it's a pretty quick way to get there without having to draw extra cards, and you have managed to generate quite a lot of stats, like spread across multiple 1/1 bodies, which I don't know how great that's going to be. This is a deck that's going to suffer if Pyro Warrior is still pretty strong in particular. So yeah, so Adaptation, I think it's going to be playable if the quest is playable. So on the condition that the quest is playable, it's like a 3. I don't think the effect, like the biggest problem I have is that there's too many adaptations. It's just not reliable to get the adaptation you're looking for most of the time when you're only adapting once. The big difference is on Galvadon, you're adapting 5 times, so your chances of getting, let's say, 2 or 3 combined adaptations is a lot higher. Okay, so let's talk about this deck. So this deck is pretty much an all-out aggro adaptation or Last Kaleidosaur quest-based deck, right? So we have the quest in the deck, and then we have a lot of the 1 mana buff spells, because when looking at Paladin, I was actually struggling to find decent buff spells. I mean, Blessing of Kings is the one we all immediately think of, but other than that, they're losing the 3 mana spell that gives +3/+1 and Divine Shield, or is it? Or it's just +3 attack and Divine Shield, which is one of their better spells to allow a minion to trade up and actually still survive. So now we're just left with Blessing of Might, which is just +3 attack, Blessing of Wisdom, which is just when it attacks, draw a card, Divine Strength, which is +1/+2, and Adaptation. So those are the 4 major buffs that we have in the deck, and then we just have Blessing of Kings. So that's only 10 buffs, right? But that's 10 spells that are awkward if you don't have minions. So that means that you have to play minions that are likely to survive, or minions that are cheap enough to play on the same turn. So turn 1 is likely going to always be Last Kaleidosaur. You always start with that, you want to play that. Turn 2, you play one of these minions and you buff it with Divine Strength. Divine Strength is always the best one to start with, the best card to start with on the mulligan out of these quests. So this is going to result in a scenario where you're flooding the board, trying to buff up some minions desperately to get towards the quest, to finish it as early as possible, and then hope you can finish with Galvadon. You should be able to control the board relatively well. And then there's a bunch of draw mechanics in this deck, like Divine Favor, obviously the classic aggressive Paladin card. Small Time Recruits, which draws you 1-cost minions, which is basically all the minions except for Primal Champions and Reversaur Runt. Firefly is really good for just giving you 2 1/1 bodies. Once again, Firefly really key to this deck, I feel. It's kind of like a better Lost in the Jungle a lot of times, because it gives you 2 1/2s for 2 essentially, which are more likely to survive and more valuable when you buff them. Obviously they also combine well with Reversaur Runt, which we discussed before, and I think is a pretty good card for Zooey decks, which we'll get to when we discuss Warlock as well. And then you also have Mean Street Marshal, which is almost a card I missed when building this deck. So Mean Street Marshal is a 1 mana 1/2 with Death Rattle. If it had 2 or more attack when it dies, you draw a card. So if you play Mean Street Marshal and you buff it with Blessing of Might or Divine Strength, then when it dies, at least, or like one of the adaptations that gives attack or +1/+1, then when it dies, at least you draw another card. So you don't get 2 for 1, and you don't lose out on the card draw like issue as much as you might otherwise. The thing is, all these minions are trying to be resilient in some way, like Argent Squire with Divine Shield, or give you value, like Firefly putting another card in the deck. Worgen Infiltrator for the stealth, so that you can guaranteed play it one turn and buff it the next. That's kind of the general game plan with this deck, right? Then obviously you got Primal Fin Champion to hopefully be able to repeat some of your buffs. So yeah, this is a very aggressive, very zooey deck. A lot of the times you're going to be looking for those +3 adaptations, go face, set them up to a low amount of health, and then kill them with Galvadon. Overall, don't really think the deck's very good. I think Paladin is probably 3rd or 4th when it comes to these aggro decks. I think Rogue probably does a better job. Just doesn't have the one big finisher in Galvadon. Hunter does a much better job with its quest, and Pirate Warrior will still be a thing, which kind of crushes this deck. If there's enough of these decks around, we might even see Warriors playing Ravaging Ghouls and stuff like that again, which is also really going to hurt this deck. So yeah, this deck might be able to compete with Pirates. I mean, Firefly and Argent Squire are really good one-drops for fighting off Patches and Zol's First Mates and stuff like that, because they have 2 health or Divine Shield. They take 2 instances of damage to kill, so they can be pretty important for that kind of thing. But yeah, Revasor Runt could be an MVP in this deck. Essentially, if you play it sometimes, it's a shielded minibot. If you get Divine Shield, then that's pretty good. That's proven to be one of the big cards that can make Paladin buff spells good. So let's say turn 1 you go Quest, turn 2, 2 1-drops, turn 3, 1-drop Revasor Runt, get Divine Shield, turn 4, Blessing of Kings, your Revasor Runt. Okay, now you can run away with the game on board, and hopefully set up for that Galvadon finish. But yeah, that's quite a bit on Paladin. I think it's overall pretty weak. I think one of the weakest classes, alongside Priest, which we will get to soon. But yeah, so yeah, I'm a bit disappointed with Paladin. I think that Paladin, lol. I think they've been very all over the show with what they've done. Yeah, Last Kaleidosauр would really been like to have seen about manipulating stats on minions, so you could. So like if it was whenever you set a minion's attack, or like not set, but let's say we want cards like Dinosize, no, not Dinosize, we want cards like Sunkeeper Tyriem and Eldor Peacekeepers and stuff to count as well, instead of it just being buff, or like targeting your minions with spells. If it was any minions and whenever you change their stats, basically, then it might be playable in like a mid-range deck, because you could actually use things like Eldor Peacekeepers and Sunkeeper Tyriems. But yeah, as is, I don't think this quest is as viable. I think it's one of the worst quests, but it does have a really big payoff. Theoretically, Galvadon should win you the game when you play it, but I don't even think that's necessarily always going to be the case. You need a specific, pretty much a combination of 3 adaptations, or at least Wind Fury and Stealth, and then you can buff it with spells. I did have Divine Blessed Champion in this deck for a bit to double minions attack as just a finisher on Galvadon. So you get a 8/5 Galvadon with Wind Fury, you double its attack, it deals 32 damage. That's one way to finish them, right? But I think that's fringe, and I'm not very positive about Paladin's potential to buff. I think they're going to be a very annoying class when they do work with stuff like Primal Fin Champion and their buffs, but overall I don't think it's going to be very strong. So yeah, next we're going to be reviewing Priest. We can go from weak class to weak class. I mean, Mage is also not the best. Well, Mage is very difficult to analyze. So yeah, thanks for watching this. Let me know if you think I got anything wrong. Maybe you think buff Paladin's going to be really like the nuts. Maybe you can lord this video over me afterwards if I got it completely wrong. So yeah, please comment on YouTube if you're watching this here. Let me know what you think. Subscribe, do all that stuff, and stick around. And stay tuned for the next one. We're going to be covering Priest next.